I will now ask Craig Dettles to come. He's a regional manager, climate risk and resilience at Fraser Health, Providence Healthcare Provincial Health Services Authority at Vancouver Coastal Health. And he's going to talk about moving toward climate resilient health facilities in British Columbia.
Okay. Hello, bonjour, je m'appelle Craig Dettles. Hello everyone, I'm Craig Dettles. I'm the Regional Manager of Climate Risk and Resilience with Vancouver Coastal Health in British Columbia. I'm here today to present on climate resilient health facilities, sharing out on some of our experiences in BC and how these can apply to others on their climate resilience journeys. Thank you to Jerome and the conference organizers for having me here today. And so I'm presenting today on the unceded traditional territories of the Kanien'kehá:ka people. This nation and other indigenous peoples have an enduring relationship with the lands, the waters, and the ice since time immemorial. And so really, when we are talking about climate resilience, this isn't a new idea. We are revisiting indigenous knowledge where human health and well-being are understood as deeply connected to the health of the planet. And so I work with Vancouver Coastal Health. That is my email address. It's one of 5 regional health authorities in British Columbia, but I'm actually part of a regional team. Our Energy and Environmental Sustainability Team, EES, provides a shared service to 4 health organizations in the Lower Mainland. So we cover a very good portion of the population in BC. And this shared service, I cover climate resilience. We also have emissions reductions. We have sustainable food. We have transportation and other priorities. And so today, we're going to look at why climate resilience is critical for health facilities and the communities we serve. I'm going to tell a little bit about the story of how we got to where we are, some lessons learned along the way. I'm going to introduce some practical tools and resources that we have worked on to embed and mainstream climate resilience in our health facility projects, both new and existing. And then I'll touch on effective ways to collaborate and work together in the health sector to further these goals. Okay, so in the past here, I would have started with graphs and projections, and I would have said, imagine the future. The year is 2050, the year is 2080. As of a couple of years ago, there's really no need to do that. There is no denying that climate change is here. In British Columbia, in Ontario, in Quebec, and across the world, we are seeing those impacts. In 2021, it really drove it home for us in BC. We had heat waves, we had wildfires, those turned into an atmospheric river, which then disconnected Vancouver from the rest of the province. And so all of this has really raised questions. Are we prepared? How can we be stronger in the face of these challenges? So for public health, climate change introduces new threats. It exacerbates existing inequities in the communities that we serve. When we look at health facilities, climate hazards place strain on our already aging infrastructure. Thank you, Ed, for driving this point home. More than half of the health facilities in Canada are over 50 years old, and they all have that backlog of deferred maintenance. At the same time, the unsustainable practices in healthcare, and we're hearing a lot about that today, these also harm the environment, creating a feedback loop where we are making the people sick that we then have to serve, which increases our need to increase services, which increases our environmental impact. And so this really underscores the need for a planetary health approach where we are considering all of these aspects together. And so just driving the point home, the 2021 heat dome saw unprecedented temperatures of up to 50 degrees in BC. Right on the heels of that was a massive wildfire. It actually burned down a small town that is in our health region. During this, hospitals were completely overwhelmed. We saw 619 deaths linked to that heat dome event, and it really underscored the need to adapt our infrastructure and our health service delivery. This one I'm going to skip, I'll skip some due to the previous presentations. Just a couple examples of what we saw on our health facilities. So heat really exacerbates existing health issues, and it can also interact with medications, slow recovery for patients. Hot temperatures also impede our ability to control humidity, control ventilation, and contain pathogens. And then finally, those overheating mechanical systems, you risk malfunctions, you risk inaccurate readings, you can have delayed procedures, and all of this carries with it serious health as well as reputational risks for the organization. And so this is why we need climate resilient health facilities. So what is it? Well, climate resilience, it's about adapting, preparing for, and responding to climate hazards. And so health facilities that are resilient are adaptable in the face of climate impacts and the future challenges that we may face. Some good news here is that with extreme events rising with the seriousness of this becoming ever apparent, we have seen increasing commitments from all levels of government, as well as the health organizations that we work with. And so nationally, we have Canada's National Adaptation Strategy that provides a framework, and then Health Canada provides health initiatives within that framework. In BC, we have a Climate Change Accountability Act that was previously our Greenhouse Gas Reduction Act. Then it was updated, requiring public sector organizations to understand and manage their climate risks. And then this is supported by a climate preparedness and adaptation strategy. Then when we look specifically at new construction projects, we have an ESG framework for capital that's supported by the Climate Resilience Framework and Standards. And so as of recently, we have minimum climate resilience standards for all new public sector buildings. And now I'm just coming to understand the Quebec context, but from what I read with a translator, the 2030 Green Economy Plan focuses on preventing climate impacts in population health and building resilience into health services. So I am interested to learn more about this while I'm here. And so what is our team doing on facilities? And so here I'll be clear, our team is not very large. Our team is one. I am the team serving 4 health organizations, and so it's spread fairly thin, but we accomplish a lot of great work, and I work with our energy teams, our environmental sustainability folks, our FMO staff, and with that, we support new construction projects to integrate resilience according to those new requirements. We also work on retrofits and hospital master planning exercises for existing facilities. And a huge part of it is actually just collaboration with Health Emergency Management BC, with our public health teams, with our municipal partners. And then finally, there's really this need to celebrate and identify climate resilience building efforts that are taking place, even when they're not explicitly called climate adaptation. Good asset management is climate adaptation. Good facilities management is climate adaptation. And I think it's just important that that doesn't fly under the radar. And so our resilience journey really began in earnest in 2018 as an exploratory project. We identified future climate projections for some of our key facilities, and that was done with PCIC, the Pacific Climate Impact Consortium, so the equivalent of ORENIS out here. And then in 2019, 2020, building on that momentum, we started a project, the Climate Resilience Guidelines for BC Health Facility Planning and Design, and that was done with a task force of folks across the health authorities, but as well as industry and partners like BC Housing. This work, bit of a humble brag here, it kind of set the stage for things to come from the province. It supported the development of this climate resilience framework and standards, And the great thing about doing that proactive work is that it then put us in a very, very strong position to respond to new requirements from the province. But we haven't been resting on our laurels. In this year alone, we've updated our Ministry of Health capital policy, and so that's what directs the funding from the Ministry of Health. So we updated that to align with all the work that's been done, and then just recently we updated our climate resilience guidelines to version 2.0. So those are on our website. And so BC is very much at the forefront of this work, the leading edge or the bleeding edge. But this work is not limited to BC. We are in very good company. At a global scale, World Health Organization provides guidance for climate resilient and environmentally sustainable facilities. In Europe, Healthcare Without Harm is developing a climate change resilience framework. In US, the Department of Health and Human Services has created a sustainable and climate resilience toolkit. We've seen that put to work in New York City Health and Hospitals, which is the largest public health service provider in the States. And then looking at Canada, we've been in conversation with the Canadian Standards Association, with the Standards Council of Canada, on how to get resilience into those standards that then apply across the country. And then along the way, we've been in continuous conversation with Alberta, with Infrastructure Ontario, and now very excited to be talking to Quebec as well. Oh, there we go. And so I'm really excited to share out, some of the progress that we've made. We have, since starting this journey, now established clear steps on how we weave climate resilience considerations into each stage of our health facility life cycle. And again, that includes new construction, but also operations over time. As soon as you have a new building and it's opened, it's no longer a new building anymore. But I think everybody here knows that health facility projects move very quickly. And so there's this need to ensure that climate resilience is embedded at each stage to support smooth implementation. When we started this work, we had to retroactively apply it to a bunch of projects. The outcomes, they were positive, but they were not as integrated as they could have been. And so our planning process, it starts with climate hazard screening, and so that's looking at the site and saying, what is relevant here? Is it in a floodplain? Is it next to a forest? Is it not? And then there's a climate risk assessment. We used to have our own methodology, but now we lean on the expertise of folks like PIVC and the ISO 14091 standard. And then through design and construction, we've got a resilient design review that leads to a climate resilience report card. And basically this just means working with the disciplines, the architects, the mechanical, to make sure that what we said we were going to get into that project stays in the project at each stage of design. And then on that existing buildings piece, once it's opened, we've actually got a climate vulnerability survey for existing buildings. And the intention there is to really understand what the building is experiencing so that we can prioritize upgrades. And so our work started with pilots on new construction. We brought that together in these climate resilience guidelines. And so launched in 2020, they outline a 4-step process that is similar to that overall process. And when we introduced it, it was a voluntary best practice, a recommendation. But then working with the Ministry of Health and the provincial government, we actually made following this process a requirement. And so no technical specifications there, but the need to go through a process. And so since 2020, the guidelines have been applied to more than 20 new construction projects across the province, across a range of health authorities. And this is just a snapshot to show that each of the organizations that we work with has engaged in at least some of those steps. And so here I want to bring it to life with an example. The new St. Paul's Hospital project in Vancouver. This is opening in 2027. 11 stories, 548 bed facility. I believe that the price tag is $2.1 billion at this point. And the application of the guidelines here resulted in some major wins for the hospital. I think great things there are mechanical equipment being above the flood level. This is actually below sea level. It's having mechanical systems that are designed for 2050 with flexibility to 2080, having carbon filtration or HEPA for wildfire smoke. And so through all of that, I can very confidently say that the new St. Paul's Hospital is more resilient than if it had been designed 10 years prior. However, there are only so many new hospital projects. Jerome and I have talked about that in Quebec, the focus is on existing facilities. And so there's a need to account for what you already have. So after we started making gains on new construction, we initiated this project to start to understand our existing building stock. And so for this one, you saw those 4 steps. What we did here was conducted high-level climate hazard exposure screen for 111 facilities simultaneously. And so that enabled some economies of scale, some efficiencies, and actually some real consistency in the results. And so the project was also designed to be iterative and allow for easy expansion, whether that's with new climate variables or especially to new sites. We've actually seen the other health authorities in BC take on this same project. And so just a little example here, this shows some of the site-specific outcomes. The intention is to bring all that climate data together in one place. You can see the sources linked there. BC and Canada, we're in a very fortunate position to have great climate data provided by Climate Data Canada, Uranus, and others. And the intention here is that you've got information ready to go for projects large and small. Finally, is a tool that we piloted on 2 facilities. We're now expanding it to 13 more. So this is a checklist basically designed to be completed through a light touch interview with facilities maintenance and operations staff, where we document what they have experienced and we account for the resilience measures that they already have in place. If they have a brand new cooling system, we're not necessarily going to recommend that. But this is intended to be a little bit of an auto-generated summary report that cross-checks with those provincial standards, and then that allows you to integrate this into your asset renewal strategy so that you can be more efficient. Just an example of climate resilience integrated into an ASHRAE Level 1 energy audit, and this is how we're starting to look at low carbon resilience right off the bat. Okay, so I think we are running low on time. I'll whip through these, just highlighting a few key lessons learned, but I am also on the panel, so we can touch on these further. Climate resilience, no longer a nice to have. It's a core part of doing business as urgency and commitments grow. When doing this work, start early. A lot of these measures can be low cost or no cost if they're counted for right off the bat. And then don't reinvent the wheel. There are resources out there. What we have built is really just building off of other industry best practices. Cost, we will touch on it very briefly. It's early days, but it's an item of great concern to folks. Really, if I can say one thing here, it's that the cost of doing nothing is not doing nothing, or is not nothing. Inaction carries real costs, and addressing these needs up front avoids greater expenses down the line. And perhaps the most important part of my presentation, and why I'm thrilled to be here today, is the collaboration piece. We would not have accomplished any of this alone. Working with public health gives us data-informed decisions. Working with the municipalities and Indigenous communities lets us create place-specific infrastructure that serves the needs. And then working with industry has allowed us to push the envelope while ensuring that our solutions are practical and realistic. So I will close by saying that health facilities are the cornerstone of our communities. In the healthcare sector, we have a moral responsibility to address climate risks impacting our buildings and our health services. And so I want to thank you all for the work that you do in this field, for your interest in the topic, and really to, for helping to push this forward together.
Thank you, Craig, very much. We're super short on time. I will take one question. Yeah. Go, Michelle.
Thank you, Greg. Very interesting. You have a nice job.
On t'entend pas.
No?
No, okay.
1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, thank you very much. I just wanted to ask you, when you talk about resilience and seeing what happened during the pandemic and the scarcity of the PPEs and other equipment, is there something in place to when there's new construction, but even with old construction, for reprocessing unit, laundering facilities that are more modern, because that you don't feel you enter in the after Second War laundering facility, because it's often that in the system. So is there a place to put like the reprocessing and the reuse of PPEs and other products in an hospital? Is it there?
And so I'll say that we are venturing into the materials area that other folks on my team do cover so well. But at the same time, one of the really valuable learnings from this is how many of the teams need to be involved in this conversation. So, food services has resilience needs, laundry has resilience needs, and exploring those early, allocating appropriate space, and having flexible spaces, especially in new facilities, has been one way to navigate that.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you so much.